Hi, I'm Edison.
I'm DC.
And welcome to Femmes React. We're going to be watching the last episode, the finale of 180 Degrees Longitude passes through us. Very quickly, happy birthday to DC, who celebrated her birthday on the weekend.
And so for the rest of the month, I'll be celebrating my birthday.
It's Libra season.
Yes, Libra season.
How are we feeling about the last episode for this show?
This has been one of those shows that has got me and dragged me and has me hooked. And it's one of those good shows that I don't want to end, but I know it's going to end. But then also, it's taken me through so many twists and turns. I don't know how it's going to end. I don't know if Anne and Wang are going to be together. I don't know if the mom is going to show her ass. And which is, okay. And mom's not a villain. I'm not saying that she's a villain, she's going to show her ass, but she's going to show her ass because, she's had this very thing happened to her.
Okay, but what does that mean? I've never heard that expression.
Instead of play nice, she's going to be like, okay, this is the way it's going to be, and just be an adversary instead of being nice. But it's also very interesting what happened in the last episode where Wang was alone again. And En left off, and En was thinking about what he's going to do. And the mom also, she had to go off because I think she was dealing with some pain of her dead husband. I think right now everybody has a whole bunch of pain that they're dealing with. And for anything to happen, everybody has to get over their pain. Not to get over it, but they have to walk through and deal with their pain in order to help other people or anything else to change. Because kind of what was happening is that En wasn't ever dealing with his pain, and so he went off and left. They could all help each other deal with their pain and all work through this in a therapeutic sort of way, but somebody has to make that first step. I don't know, it's a lot. It's a lot. The show's a lot. I love it.
It's great. It's definitely my favorite show this year so far. They do this thing where we really get to explore everybody's mentality in a very kind of clear way, in that it's not suggested, it's very articulated. And so it's a lot of problems that I have with Thai BLs is that I always am guessing at the character's motivation. So that's one of my favorite things, is that we really get to not only understand but empathize with everybody's position. And I think the show creates such a great situation and context to explore relationships and romance as character studies, but also on a deeper level, there is definitely a bigger message in all of this, if not just giving some sort of relation to how you personally navigate life, but also I wonder what sort of morality or political message it's gonna have as a result of this ending. So I'm curious to see what its final message is, whether it's about being able to grow and change, taking the perspective of En and what steps he takes to figure out how to navigate his fears that have held him back, but also the relationship with the mother. A lot of people see her as toxic and controlling, and I guess the show is positioning her to be the conservative force in society. I don't know if for me that I 100% see those parallel, but I understand that people would have had a relationship where someone uses their emotions and obligations, not necessarily consciously, but it's just like everyone has their own perspective in, I guess, where they see themselves in these characters. And so I wonder what the finesse is, because for me, I'm as self-centered as a mother, so it's hard for me to see her as toxic, because that would just be like my needs are toxic in terms of that. I don't know, even with the term manipulative, I am kind of like whatever at, because I feel like everyone does things to get what they want. It's more about the lack of concern you have for other people. I don't think she's diabolical or that she doesn't care about the other people in the show. the pain that she feels surpasses her capability to consider what other people are feeling because it's very overwhelming and makes her desperate.
Because of everything I've gone through and stuff like that, I see parents as complex individual because a lot of people like to put parents as black and white and no good and stuff. I think she is complex in that she doesn't want Wang to leave her and doesn't want Wang to go, and she wants them to be there. But at the same time, I see her as also a parent, and she doesn't want him to go, but yet she still wants the best for him. And that's where that conservative, it's not a conservative out of controlling and being evil. It's sometimes a conservativeness is like, okay, this is a safe way for you because I want the best for you. That's where I kind of like square the circle. And that's where it's kind of like, okay, this works and this will keep you safe. The outcome may be manipulation, but I think the intent is motherly and she wants her son to have a good life. But also, at the same time, she doesn't want to be alone. And guess, two things can be true at the same time.
Well, yeah, the best thing for him is to be with her. So that's how she sort of figured it out. But no, I understand her fears. I understand her pain. It kind of is interesting that though a lot of the audience doesn't see that. And I'm kind of just like, am I a really empathetic person? Like, is that me? Like,
the parents are doing the best that they can with what they have and what knowledge that they have. Parents are human too, and they make mistakes. They choose wrong.
I think for her, she really needs to process feeling unloved, which is a big thing for all of us because I feel unloved because I get no matches on Tinder. But she has really been in denial about the situation with her husband. And deep down, she knows that he never loved her. And I think she's so worried that the son doesn't love her because she feels like the son has been all about the dad. So I am very concerned that she does have this innate insecurity that I have, that I'm just unlikable. And so, like, you know, her being alone at the party after her victory, a lot of people were like, well, that's indicative of your personality. If nobody wants to celebrate with you, you must be so hard to be around. And so that's something she definitely thought about, I think, as a person, as me projecting. I think she's very afraid that being abandoned equals that nobody wants to be around her.
I had to do some work around being alone and feeling lonely. And then also what that's like, because sometimes I can be around a whole bunch of people and be alone and feel lonely. But I can be by myself and not. Also, what kind of love is she looking for? Her son can say that he still loves her and not be there, but that's not enough. And there's a lot of work, inner work she should do around that. That even when her son was around, she had that affair with the guy who she said was fixing her shower and all this other kind of stuff. She was still feeling alone. So what kind of being alone, or what is that love equal to her?
Sometimes it's a catalyst. I imagine there'll be a catalyst in this show because Wang is driving away and things are kind of like deja vuing in terms of potentially losing somebody. So sometimes it's that, right? But how do you think In is gonna come to a decision?
I hope In chooses himself, because that's another thing that In really hasn't been doing, because In has been choosing making the mom happy, doing this for everybody else, doing this. He went away to hope the father doesn't think about him, and he saw the father was happy and he went. I hope ultimately In does something different and In chooses himself.
Something about In that I don't relate to, but I can understand, is that maybe he does feel indebted to the mom because he had no friends in high school. And she's befriended him, obviously, to get with the dad. But maybe along the way, that became a genuine friendship for both of them and for In. And so he does feel some sort of appreciation that he had another friend to talk to and stuff like that. The whole phenomena of him deciding to be alone and be a whale and doing what's best for other people is embedded in thinking that he isn't going to add value to people's lives by being there, I guess. So for me, I imagine that In would be at a breaking point where he's given up so much that there would be a lot of relief for him to finally get what he wants. Like maybe a lot of it is just him letting go of the things, the voices that are saying you don't deserve what you want or whatever.
It's not that In doesn't want to get what he wants. I think he's being altruistic, and then also he's got this like martyr complex. But he thought the father would be happier because he was happy when he talked about Wang being born and stuff like that. He didn't realize that he wasn't having a relationship. He was just happy that Wang was born. He's putting other people first. And that's why I kind of meant with him choosing himself and putting himself first. Too much altruism is just as bad as being selfish, completely selfish. So like if you're like always thinking about other people, always doing that, and you end up pouring from an empty cup, you know, you're really not helping anyone else.
I guess so. I guess he thinks it's like him repaying CM back for taking care of him because that's what he thinks is best. I don't know. Okay, let's just get started on the show. We gotta get into it. We gotta get into the reaction.
เจ๊อินผิดไหมครับถ้าผมจะทักใครอีกสักคนถ้าเขาคืออินทวุฒิต้องเคยได้
Same man the dad was in love with.
I mean, like if I wasn't so enamored with this show, I would be like, that's strange. I mean, but I'm just like, yeah, get your daddy's ex.
เธอไม่ได้รู้จักเขาดีพอเธอเจอกับเขาแค่กี่วันเชียวฉันเป็นแม่เขาฉันเป็นแม่เขามาทั้งชีวิตฉันยังไม่กล้าพูดเลยว่าฉันรู้จักเขาดี
Oh.
แล้วดูสิวันดีคืนดีเขามาเจอกับเธอแล้วก็เกิดติดอกติดใจมาบอกกับฉันว่าเขาจะไม่อยู่กับฉันแล้วเขาจะทิ้งฉันทิ้งทุกอย่างที่โน่นฉันไม่รู้ว่าฉันกับแหวงหลงมาติดอยู่ในไอ้หุบเขาดึกดำบรรพ์นี้ได้ยังไงติดกับไม่รู้ว่าเป็นเคราะห์กรรมอะไรสินะฉันนึกว่าชีวิตนี้เราจะไม่มีวันต้องมาพบปะเจอกันแล้วซะอีก
Oh, she knew.
มนนี่มนเกลียดเราขนาดนี้เลยเหรอ
ฉันเคยรักเธอฉันเคยบอกเธอแล้วไงว่าเธอเคยเป็นเพื่อนที่ฉันไว้ใจที่สุดฉันไม่ได้อยากจะรื้อฟื้นอะไรหรอกนะแล้วฉันก็ไม่อยากรู้ด้วยว่าความจริงมันเป็นยังไง
I do.
ขอให้มันดับสูญไปกับผู้ชายที่ชื่อสยามแต่ในเมื่อเรายังไม่หมดเวรต่อกัน
Because now you want my son too.
ขอให้เธอช่วยฉันเป็นครั้งสุดท้ายถ้าไม่ได้เห็นแก่ฉันก็เห็นแก่ลูกฉันลูกของสยามพี่ชายสุดที่รักของเธอ
เราไม่ได้เป็นอย่างที่มนคิด
แล้วเธอทำอะไรเธอเป็นอะไร
ก็ที่มนคิดว่าเราไม่ช่วยมนเสีย
เหรอเพราะฉะนั้นฉันจะลองกล้าเผชิญกับความจริงดูบ้างฉันมีอีกหลายเรื่องที่อยากจะถามเธอ
Yes.
ไม่กล้าถาม
Oh, okay, fine.
แต่ก็เอาเถอะ
No, get it out. Talk about it. Spill the tea. I want to know.
เรื่องที่เกิดขึ้นตอนนี้เดี๋ยวนี้เธอกล้าที่จะตอบความจริงกับฉันหรือเปล่า
เรื่องอะไร
I get where she's coming from,
เขา
though.
บอกว่าเขารักเธอไง
She feels very betrayed by everything.
เธอรักเขาอย่างที่เขารักเธอหรือเปล่า
She must.
Ooh.
คุณอินครับผมไปหาที่ลงรถคุณมนไม่อยู่นี่ครับ
อิน เธอนิ่งเฉยอยู่ได้ยังไง
I got a broken leg
เขาขับรถออกไปเขาขับรถออกไป
รออีกสักพักทั้งหมดเดี๋ยวเขาก็กลับมา
คนอย่างเธอเหรอจะจัดการ เธอก็เอาแต่เงียบ เอาตัวรอด ไม่เคยต้องทุกข์ร้อนเดือดร้อนใดๆเลยอะชีวิตใครจะพังทลายเธอก็ไม่ต้องสน แต่ฉันสิ ฉันเป็นคนที่ต้องเผชิญหน้ากับมัน อยู่กับมันแล้วเธอก็ยังมีหน้ามาบอกให้ฉันไปนอนเธอคิดว่าฉันจะหลับลงเหรอแวงขับรถออกไปแบบนั้นอะ
It's a big boy
ไอ้ตะวดพี่สยามก็ขับรถออกไปแบบนั้น
That's why
แล้วเขาก็ไม่กลับมา
I think a part of her feels like if she did something that night, she could have prevented his death. And so now it's just coming back to her that she has to do something now. This is like the most beautiful credit sequence though.
Right, they need every minute of
They're like, keep acting more, we need to keep adding more names in the credits.
เธอมันน่าขยะแขยง
What the hell
ขอโทษเราขอโทษเราขอโทษ
Maul is going. She's just too much. I told you she'd show ass.
I mean, I didn't feel like she went far enough at all. Are we good? Is Wang back? Oh, good. Okay, so nothing's dramatic is going down. I mean, in terms of driving.
Right.
คืนนี้ตัวเองนอนที่นี่นะนี่ตัวเองนอนเตียงเดียวกับเขาก็ได้นี่ไงเตียงกว้างนอนสบายเลย แล้วก็แล้วพรุ่งนี้เราก็ออกกันแต่เช้าเขาสัญญานะว่าเขาจะตื่นเช้าเขาจะตื่นก่อนตัวเองด้วยคอยดูสิแล้วเราก็จะได้ไปถึงบ้านกันบ่ายๆไง
She's struggling. Oh gosh.
He ain't leaving though. She can see it on his face.
She's so desperate to kind of go back to the way things were. That she has no idea how to face the present issue.
Genie's out the bottle.
บางทีชีวิตเราก็กำหนดไม่ได้แต่เขาก็จะยอมทำทุกอย่างให้ตัวเองมีชีวิตที่มีความสุขที่สุด
ดีที่สุดของตัวเองอาจจะไม่ใช่ชีวิตที่เขามีความสุขที่สุดก็ได้นะ
อินทวุฒิเคยบอกไหมว่าเขารักตัวเองเหมือนที่ตัวเองรักเขา
ถ้าเขาเจ็บเขาจะไม่หนีตัวเองไปไหน
Huh? Oh, honey, stop hiding behind those bars. Golly.
แหวงไปไหนมา รู้ไหมว่าแม่เขาเป็นห่วง
แล้วผมก็คิดถึงพ่อ ตอนที่พ่อขับรถออกไป พ่อก็คงเหมือนผม อยากไปให้ไกลไม่รู้จุดหมาย แต่ผมกับพ่อคงไม่เหมือนกันตรงที่พ่อไม่รู้จุดหมายจริงๆตอนนั้นโลกของพ่อคงมืดมนไปหมดมืดจนไม่รู้ว่าจะข้ามเส้นแบ่งเขตกลางคืนนี้ไปให้ถึงกลางวันได้ยังไงสิ่งเดียวที่พ่อรู้ก็คือไม่มีวันที่จะหาวาน52 เฮิร์ตซ์ตัวนั้นเจอ
Oh my god, I can't believe there's a line in the window. Cross it! Okay.
เราไม่มีวันได้ทุกสิ่งที่เราอยากได้หรอก
เราสู้แล้วหรือยังนะฮะหรือปิดโอกาสตัวเองสำหรับผมสู้แล้วแพ้ยังดีกว่าแพ้เพราะไม่สู้
เราจำเป็นต้องแลกด้วยชีวิตเหรอแวง
คนไม่สู้แต่เอาชีวิตไม่รอดก็มีนี่ฮะไอ้ก็เห็นมาแล้วอ่ะ
I thought that was a bit more political. That last bit.
ไอ้น่าจะรู้ดีนี่ว่าการแข่งขันสัญชาตญาณของตัวเองมันทรมานขนาดไหนอ่ะ
อย่าทำให้เราผิดหวังในตัวแวง
Oh, okay.
What?
เกิดอะไรขึ้นตอนที่ผมไม่อยู่
ไม่มีอะไรนี่ นอกจากทุกคน
เกิดอะไรขึ้น
ถ้าจะขอลองแวงอีกสักอย่าง
Go with your mom.
แวงกลับไปซะเถอะ
Yep.
ยิน
ยังอยู่ที่นี่ ไม่ไปไหนแวงจะมาหาเมื่อไหร่แวงก็มาได้แวงรู้พิกัดดีอยู่แล้วแวงรู้ดีว่าวาน52 เฮิร์ตซ์ตัวนี้ ไม่ได้อยู่ใต้มหาสมุทรลึกแสนสงบอย่างที่มันใฝ่ฝัน แต่มันจะดีกว่าการที่เราทุกคนต้องเจ็บไปมากกว่านี้
Oh, and you haven't changed.
อินยังขี้ขลาดเหมือนเดิม
ใช่
Okay.
เป็นคนขี้ขลาด
แต่ผมไม่ใช่คนขี้ขลาดอย่างอาอิน ไม่ใช่คนขี้ขลาดอย่างพ่อ และไม่ใช่คนขี้ขลาดอย่างคุณศักดิ์ศรีวิมล
แวงจะด่าว่ายังไงก็ได้ แต่แวงไม่ควรก้าวร้าว
ก้าวร้าวล่วงเกินพ่อแม่ ผมรู้ และผมก็เพิ่งรู้ซึ้งเดี๋ยวนี้เองว่าทุกคนมันขี้ขลาด
Oh my god.
ไม่กล้ายอมรับ ไม่กล้าเผชิญความจริงหลีกหนีกันไปคนละอย่าง
Don't bring some crumb into this. God.
แต่สำหรับผมอินคิดว่าผมจะยอมแพ้ง่ายๆเหรอฮะ
นี่มันไม่ใช่เรื่องของการเอาชนะด้ว
แล้ว
ย
มันเป็นเรื่องอะไร การเสียสละเหรอ ไอ้คิดว่าอินเป็นผู้เสียสละงั้นเหรอ ไอ้คิดว่าการที่อินอยู่เฉยๆโดยไม่เลือกอะไร คือการเสียสละเหรอ
การไม่เลือกก็คือการเลือกบอกแล้วไง ไม่มีวันได้ทุกสิ่งที่เราอยากได้หรอก นี่คือความจริง เราต้องอยู่กับความจริง
แล้วในเมื่อความรักคือความจริง ผมก็ควรมีสิทธิ์เลือกความจริงอินก็ควรมีสิทธิ์เลือกความจริง คนเราทุกคนควรมีสิทธิ์เลือกความจริง
สิทธิ์ที่ต้องมีขอบเขต
สำหรับผมความจริงคือขอบเขต
แล้วแหวงรู้ได้ยังไง ว่าความจริงของเราคือความจริงอย่างเดียวกันน่ะ
งั้นอินบอกผมสิฮะว่าความจริงอินไม่ได้รู้สึกอะไรเลย บอกสิฮะ บอกสิฮะ
เงียบเสียงลูกหน่อยแหวง
อินกลัวอะไร กลัวใครได้ยินงั้นเหรอ ในป่า ในหุบเขาดึกดำบรรพ์ในใต้ทะเลลึกของอิน มีมนุษย์ที่ไหนจะได้ยิน สิ่งที่อินส่งสัญญาณมาตลอดคืออะไร
มีสติหน่อยแหวง
บอกผมสิ
มีสติหน่อย
ผมมีสติ
เธอไม่มีสติเธอกำลังคลั่ง
ผมมีสติและผมมีสัญชาตญาณ
สัญชาตญาณทำให้เธอคลั่ง
แต่อินล่ะ เคยใช้สัญชาตญาณบ้างไหมตอนมันเตียงนี่กับอิน ผมก็ยิ่งแน่ใจในสัญชาตญาณ รู้ไหมผมโคตรภูมิใจในสัญชาตญาณตัวเองเลย ไม่เคยรู้สึกผิดสักนิด แต่ตอนนี้เสียใจหน่อยๆที่หลายคืนผ่านมา ผมกักขังสัญชาตญาณตัวเองไว้มากเกินไปด้วยซ้ำ
กลับไปเถอะ
ไอ้นี่จะรู้ดีนี่ว่าการกักขังสัญชาตญาณของตัวเองมันทรมานขนาดไหนอ่ะ
อย่าทำให้เราผิดหวังในตัวแหวง
ผิดหวังในตัวผม
ความไร้สติ หรือสิ่งที่แหวงเรียกว่าสัญชาตญาณกำลังชักจูงให้แหวงทำเหมือนที่ใครๆอีกหลายคนทำ
Hey.
พวกที่ไม่ได้ดังใจ ก็กระชากมันมาทำลาย เราคิดว่าแหวงจะแตกต่างจากคนอื่น
ผมก็นึกว่าอินจะแตกต่างจากคนอื่นเหมือนกัน ผมน่าจะรู้ว่าผมไม่ได้แค่ไอเด็กใจเร็ว เอาแต่ใจ รอไม่ได้ในสายตาของคนที่เรียกตัวเองว่าผู้ใหญ่พวกที่เห็นว่าผมมีแต่คำว่าเดี๋ยวนี้ผมนึกว่าไอ้จะต่างจากคนอื่นแต่เปล่าเลยไอ้ก็เหมือนคนอื่นนั่นแหละไม่มีวันยอมแลกสิ่งที่ตัวเองมีกับสิ่งที่ไม่เคยมีอาอินกลัวว่าเราจะเจ็บปวดกันไปมากกว่านี้แล้วเป็นไงที่ผ่านมาทุกคนก็ยังต้องเจ็บปวดอยู่ดีทั้งแม่ทั้งอาอินทั้งผมมีอยู่คนเดียวเท่านั้นแหละที่ไม่ต้องเจ็บต้องปวดกับใครต่อไปพ่อไง
พอเถอะเลิกขุดเรื่องนี้สักที
ทำไมนะอาอินเป็นคนเล่าให้ผมฟังเองนี่นั่งร้องไห้อยู่ตรงนั้นน้ำตาของอาอินมันฟ้องผมว่าอาอินยังเจ็บปวดอยู่ไม่มีวันหายเจ็บปวดจากความละอายต่อความรู้สึกที่พ่อมีต่ออาอินละอายต่อความรู้สึกที่อาอินมีต่อพ่อละอายต่อบาปที่ทำกับพ่อไว้
Alright, you left him.
ตอนนี้อาอินก็กำลังละอายต่อความรู้สึกที่มีกับผมที่ช่วยปริศนาที่ผมตามหาได้พบคำเฉลยสักทีถึงแม้จะเฉลยไม่หมดก็เถอะ
นี่โกรธ
ผมน่าจะรู้ว่าอาอินกลัวคำนั้นคำที่พ่อบอกกับอาอินในคืนนั้นคำที่อาอินไม่บอกผมด้วยซ้ำว่ามันคือคำว่าอะไรคำที่เปลี่ยนแปลงทุกอย่างแต่ผมก็รู้ว่ามันคือคำว่าอะไรพ่อสารภาพว่ารักอาอินเสียงโทรศัพท์ที่ดังขึ้นทุกๆคืนอาอินยังจำได้ไม่ลืมไม่ใช่หรอนั่นคือเสียงที่พ่อบอกรักอาอินแต่อาอินขี้ขลาดอาอินยอมรับไม่ได้และอาอินก็รู้อยู่แก่ใจว่าเพราะคำนี้ไงที่อาอินตัดสินใจหนีแต่ความจริงการหนีของอาอินก็แค่อาอินตัดพ่อออกไปจากชีวิตไอ้คิดว่ามันคงง่ายๆแค่นั้นไม่คิดสักนิดว่านั่นคือชีวิตแล้วมันไม่ใช่แค่ชีวิตพ่อมันคือชีวิตแม่ชีวิตผมไอ้ไม่รู้เลยว่าการตัดพ่อไปชีวิตของไอ้จะเป็นการพรากพ่อไปจากผมชั่วชีวิตได้เหมือนกัน
Wow. Okay.
ฉันเขียนเส้นของกลางวันให้เรามีเพียงตะวันส่องแสงนานเรื่อยไปผมรักอาอินแม้ว่าอาอินจะไม่เคยพูดคำนั้นกับใครเลยก็ตามข้ามมาได้ไหม
Oh wow. Wow.
ฝากลาเขาด้วยนะ
I don't know. I honestly
ขอบคุณสำหรับ
didn't think that In had all this. I didn't know like most of his feelings were dealt with in terms of like internalized homophobia, in terms of like he didn't want to accept the love. The politics of the show tying in with the relationship is something I missed.
ฝากลาเขาด้วยนะบอกเขาว่าขอบคุณสำหรับทุกอย่าง
ตัวเองไม่อยากลาเขาเองหรอ
ไม่ดีกว่า
My gosh, things feel kind of surreal.
Notice the wine glass right there.
ใช่แวงยังเหลือเวลา
I hate this. They're doing the small talk.
Oh, I thought his bag was a trash bag for a second. Like when I came into the room.
Yes. Derelict.
ขอบคุณนะครับ
Garbage bag.
ว่าทำไมผมต้องยอมรับการตัดสินใจของอาอินทำไมผมไม่เลือกทำตามใจของตัวเองถ้าผมดื้อถ้าผมรั้นถ้าผมไม่ไปไหนผมจะชนะไม่ว่าใครก็อยากชนะด้วยกันทั้งนั้น จริงไหมฮะแต่ถ้าผมชนะแล้วใครล่ะที่แพ้ ไม่ใช่ผมไม่ใช่อาอินเมื่อคืนใครคนนั้นนั่งรอผมอยู่
I hope she didn't hear everything.
แวนเป็นอะไรลูกใครทำอะไรไหม
Oh, that's why she really doesn't want to see end again.
แม่อยู่นี่แล้ว
ผมเฝ้าถามตัวเองว่าเธอผิดอะไร เธอผิดที่รักผม และอยากให้ผมอยู่อย่างปลอดภัยในโลกใบเก่าของเธอที่เธออยากกักขังผมไว้อย่างนั้นเหรอ โลกที่ความจริงแล้วมันก็โลกใบเดียวกัน ที่ไม่มีใครครอบครองได้อย่างแท้จริง ไม่มีวันกักขังผมได้ เพราะผมยังมีเวลา ใช่ เวลายังเป็นของผม ผมจึงเลือกที่จะไป ทางที่ผมเลือกนี้ไม่ได้หมายความว่าผมแพ้ คนที่แพ้ไม่ใช่ผม ไม่ใช่คุณศศิวิมล
แวงยังโกรธยังแค้นอา
ผมไม่โกรธ ไม่แค้น ผมยังยืนยัน ว่าผมรักอาอิน ผมจะไม่มีวันลืมวาน52 เฮิร์ตซ์ ถึงแม้มันจะแสนสั้น แต่ก็แสนสุข
And this is the thing that I see with Wang, and I also get this. You can be in love with someone and still love someone, but you know you can't be with them. And I think that's where Wang is right now. But then also I think grew on Wang, and Wang gathered a lot of stuff and said to him, because he's like you said, you know, time is on my side, you know, I can wait out and all this other kind of stuff. But what I was expecting or I was hoping to make paramount, I could stay here and I could eventually win, but who loses? Not me or you, but my mom. The one thing that wasn't explicit in him saying, he was like, okay, well, me and my mom win. I thought he was going to say, well, and you lose. Ultimately, N is still alone. And the whole thing that he was talking about, and especially when they were having the fight in the previous night, about N was thinking he was being so sacrificing and all this other kind of stuff. He would take on the hurt. By removing himself, he would just be away and he would remove all the hurt. But with him being gone, it hurt everybody. One of the things I did find interesting when N was talking, he was like, you know, when you don't choose either or choose a side, you're actually choosing a side. It was just a lot. And the thing that Mo didn't want to say goodbye to N was because of the previous stuff, but then also she saw that N hurt her son. What do you think?
I think it's hard to examine the show without going through the political lens, because knowing that was the intention of the director, but also I feel like the political allegories are so overt that I get lost in what the real message is, because sometimes I find the political messages to be very in your face and they don't always translate back to the relationships of the characters. Sometimes the discussion is very like in talking about people who own the world. It's your time, inaction, being ashamed of love. Like, they weren't the motivations that I thought were inhabiting the characters. I think when I thought about In, I never really considered the amount of internal homophobia involved in how much he actually pushed Siam away, not only just because he thought it was the best, but because he was shameful of his own feelings. I think maybe there has been some sort of intertwinement in which they have tried to get those parallels across. And so it's confusing what I think which characters are thinking. When they did have the discussion, I did get sort of confused about what the real message was, because it did feel like it was speaking to a higher level where Wang was talking to a generation that felt, you know, like the judge, the Black's mum in Not Me, like the judge, the adults who accept the world for the structural kind of monolith and all that stuff that it is, and them going, we need to live according to the reality, and sometimes we can't get what we want and we just have to deal with it. In a way, it felt like internalized that sort of, I need to live as a queer man in my own way that is acceptable for society, which is diminishing some of the things that I want. And so I don't know if that was his attitude, but also where I get lost is Wang ultimately decided to leave with his mum because he felt like he was ultimately considerate for her in the end. But I know that politically, people don't pause the fight because they're considerate of the structure. I think that was where I got confused in how much we're tying the allegories into the characters. But ultimately, what I did understand was the time message. It felt like Wang was providing a message of hope for the audience who are relating to Wang, like the activists and people who are striving for change, in terms of we still have time, we still are young, we can still fight and create change, and also that the powers that be are still winning, but it's the people who are accepting the inaction. They're the real losers because they're not going to benefit from change when it comes because they are stuck in their mentality and they might be too old to experience the new world whenever that comes, It's sort of a bit of a warning in that, if you don't decide to change or let go or fight, then you will just regress into what In has become. And I think Wang is just the audience finding peace with how long it will take to win someone over, but also gain some political traction. And it's more about, sometimes you need to take a step back and live our lives without making too many enemies and bide our time. I think some of it is really just alluding to, yes, our parents are conservative, they don't see the same things that we do, but we still love them. And we ultimately do need to be at peace and live with that and live with them. And so it's all these messages that I think are fighting sometimes against each other, sometimes with each other. And I think ultimately the political things that the director wanted to put across overtook the story. I don't think I would understand In without that political lens for this story.
แฟนคิดว่านอกจากอาจจะขี้ขลาดแล้ว
Yep.
ยังเห็นแก่ตัวด้วยไหม
มีใครไม่เห็นแก่ตัวบ้างล่ะฮะ
ไม่ว่าจะเลือกทางไหนก็เหมือนเห็นแก่ตัวทั้งนั้น
ผมถึงใช้ความกล้าและความเชื่อตามสัญชาตญาณนำทาง
ซึ่งไม่มีสิ่งเหล่านั้น
มีสิครับอินรู้ว่าอินมีทุกคืนที่เรานอนใกล้กันแม้ไม่ชิดกันผมยังได้ยินเสียงผมรู้ว่ามันมีอยู่อินว่ายุคสมัยหล่อหลอมให้คนเราแตกต่างกันไหมฮะ
ก็มีส่วน แต่อย่าไปโทษยุคสมัยเลย โทษเนื้อแท้ในตัวเราดีกว่า
ก็อาจจะจริงเราเปลี่ยนเนื้อแท้ของกันและกันไม่ได้จริงๆพ่ออยู่ในตัวผมแล้วรับไปสิครับ ที่ระลึกเราใกล้กันจนเกือบจะชิดแต่ก็ไม่ใกล้ไปกว่านั้นผมไม่เคยถามอาอินว่าอาอินรักผมเหมือนที่ผมรักอาอินไหมและผมก็จะไม่ถามเพราะรู้ว่าอาอินไม่มีวันตอบซึ่งผมไม่มีทางที่จะบังคับหรือเปลี่ยนอาอินได้เลยแต่สิ่งที่ผมอยากจะขอคือขอให้ผมได้กอดอาอินและอาอินกอดผมด้วยความรู้สึกที่แท้จริงที่เรามีต่อกันด้วยเนื้อแท้ด้วยความรู้สึกที่ไม่ต้องพูดเป็นถ้อยคำสักครั้งได้ไหมครับครั้งเดียวที่เราจะจดจำมันไว้ไม่ลืมฉันเขียนเส้นของกลางวันให้เรามีเพียงตะวันส่องแสงนานเรื่อยไปให้เรามีเพียงกลางวันให้ไอร้อนของดวงตะวันโอบกอดเราเอาไว้สุดเขตแดนที่มืดมนผ่านกลางคืนที่ร่วงโรยหล่นมีฉันอยู่ไม่ไกลสุดขอบฟ้าที่ว่างเปล่าขีดเส้นไว้เป็นที่ของเราเธอข้ามมาได้ไหม
Hugs are amazing.
ข้ามมาได้ไหม
แวงรักษาความเชื่อและสัญชาตญาณนี้ไว้นะใช้มันดีๆสักวัน
ฉันเขียนเส้นของกลางวันให้เรามีเพียงตะวันส่องแสงนานผมจะรักษาความเชื่อและสัญชาตญาณนี้ไว้สักวันแล้วสักวันแต่สำหรับอาอินผมรู้ว่าไม่มีวัน
แหวงลงมาจากรถเดี๋ยวนี้เลยมา
ไม่เขาจะขับ
ไม่ เดี๋ยวตัวพาเขาไปหลงที่ไหนอีกก็ไม่รู้
ใครกันแน่หลงตัวเองนั่นแหละหลง
ตัวเองนั่นแหละหลงลงมา
ไม่
เร็ว
หลงเขาจะขับ
ลง
นะ
มา
เขาขับนะให้เขาขับนะนะอ่ะตัวเองขับก่อนก็ได้แต่ต้องผัดกันนะโอเคไหม
ตัวเองหิวไหม เราแวะกินโจ๊กในเมืองกันก่อนมะ นี่ ตัวเองรู้ไหมเมื่อเช้านี้นะ ที่เขาหาแว่นตากันแดดจนปวดหัวเนี่ยเขาโทรไปหายายเอลซ่าไปสั่งงาน แล้วรู้มะเขาก็บ่นเรื่องแว่นกันแดดกับเอลซ่ายายเอลซ่าก็ถามว่าใช่แว่นกันแดดที่เป็นเลนส์สีฟ้าใหญ่ๆแล้วก็มีสายห้อยหรือเปล่าเขาก็บอกว่าก็พี่บ่นว่าเลนส์อันนั้นเนี่ยนะมันไม่ดีพี่ให้หนูเอาไปเปลี่ยนไงพี่จำได้ไหม ตายละดูสิวันนี้เขาก็เลยไม่ได้มองโลกด้วยเลนส์สีฟ้าเลย
แล้วเราก็มุ่งหน้าสู่เส้นลัติจูดที่13องศาเหนือ45ลิบดาลองจิจูดที่100องศาตะวันออก31ลิบดาใช่ครับกรุงเทพมหานครเมืองที่ผมต้องกักขังตัวเองไว้ไม่รู้อีกนานเท่าไหร่หลังจากที่ผมออกจากบ้านนายอินทวุฒิมาวันนั้นผมก็ไม่ได้หวนกลับไปอีกเลยผมไม่ได้ข่าวคราวของอาอินทวุฒิอาอินคนที่สอนให้ผมรู้ว่าเราทุกคนอยู่บนโลกเดียวกันแต่อาจต่างกันเหมือนคนละโลกเราไม่มีวันเปลี่ยนโลกของใครได้เพราะเนื้อแท้ของคนไม่มีวันเปลี่ยนผมจะไม่มีวันลืมอาอินถึงแม้โลกของผมเป็นกลางวันแต่โลกของอาอินยังเป็นกลางคืนและผมจะไม่มีวันลืมว่าครั้งหนึ่งผมเคยลากเส้นลองจิจูดที่180องศาผ่านภูเขาดึกดำบรรพ์แห่งหนึ่งเพื่อมาพบวาน52เฮิร์ตซ์ที่ไม่ได้อยู่ใต้มหาสมุทรถึงแม้ไม่มีใครเข้าใจความถี่ของเสียงที่วานนั้นสื่อสารแต่ผมเข้าใจเพราะเราใกล้กันมากใกล้กันจนเกือบจะชิดแต่ไม่ใกล้ไปกว่านั้นเส้นลองจิจูดที่180องศาขวางกั้นเราอยู่อาอินฮะผมจะไม่มีวันลืมช่วงเวลาของเราถึงแม้ว่ามันจะแสนสั้นแต่ก็แสนสุขฉันเขียนเส้นของกลางวันให้เรามีเพียงตะวันส่องแสงนานเรื่อยไปให้เรามีเพียงกลางวันให้ไอร้อนของดวงตะวันโอบกอดเราเอาไว้สุดเขตแดนที่มืดมนผ่านกลางคืนที่ร่วงโรยหล่นมีฉันอยู่ไม่ไกลสุดขอบฟ้าที่ว่างเปล่าขีดเส้นไว้เป็นที่ของเราเธอจะมาด้วยไหมเมื่อฉันลากเส้นแบ่งวันให้เส้นนั้นโอบล้อมเราโอบกอดเธอและฉันตลอดไปแต่ถ้าฉันลากเส้นแบ่งวันและเส้นนั้นกำลังแยกเราแบ่งให้เธอและฉันยิ่งห่างไกลเมื่อฉันลากเส้นแบ่งวันให้เส้นนั้นโอบล้อมเราโอบกอดเธอและฉันตลอดไปแต่ถ้าฉันลากเส้นแบ่งวันและเส้นนั้นกำลังแยกเราแบ่งให้เธอและฉันยิ่งห่างไกล
That is the end of 180 degrees longitude passes between us. What do you think about the ending? What do you think about the series? What do you think about?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts. Just wanted to quickly go over the hug because it was so intense. The acting was phenomenal. I think I got really emotional because I had like one moment where he kind of let his guard down and he really felt happy for like a genuine second. It's befuddling, but it's also kind of sad that he won't fight for that feeling. Like I don't necessarily know what his motivations are, but I understand that despite everything, the message is that fundamentally people have their own reasons for not fighting or for not wanting to get what they wanted to, and they could have everything about them in the right place in terms of like capacity to to think and reason, but still there's a part of them that has a fundamental fear of doing something. And it's very interesting that the show is positioning everything to be about that message at the end. The tragedy of leaving someone behind who isn't going to be able to experience the new things that we're all trying to get towards. And obviously, you know, the relationship that will never happen between In and Wang. I don't think they did anything at the end because they do keep talking about how they couldn't touch. So I'm guessing nothing really happened at that night. The other thing is, yeah, I think this message is meant to be about feeling at peace with going for what you want, not being able to get it, but then learning something from it, taking it as a memory and then just moving on, and then knowing that there's still more waiting for you. The other interesting thing is how we position the mother. To me, there's such a finesse about the character in that we know that she is meant to represent the conservative structures, but a part of me, I don't know if that's gone over my head, but a part of me just really understands where she's coming from, even when she was yapping away on the drive home. I know people are going to interpret that as her winning, being back to her self-centered self and making everything about her, even though her son is crying and feeling emotional, and all she wants to do is talk about herself. But to me, I feel like that's her way of ignoring the problem and bringing him to a place where he can forget about In. I feel like she's doing what she can in her own way, in what she understands, which is to just be superfluous and just be like, oh, ha ha ha, you know, like, and not talk about the issues. And that's her way of being okay with things. And I think that's what she was trying to do for him. I might be reading too much into it. But the last thing is, there was some hope in that Wayne was making leeway with the mother in terms of negotiations and stuff like that, in which she would tell him that she could let him drive afterwards. Or that's what they agreed upon. I think at least there's progress there in terms of that relationship. In the end, I understand why the ending is how it is, because it is more true to life in that there's no way you're gonna be able to undo and change everyone in the matter of a week and have all that catharsis and stuff. I think it's really the tragedy is on in that his position in life is real, and that people are out there just running away from things and who have become so complacent that they are not going to be able to experience fulfillment. Those are all my takeaways.
Especially in real life, often people don't change. Like, and this is what they say, that older people are set in their ways. But then also, a lot of times, people in reality, a lot of times, people won't change unless they do the work themselves. No one can force you to change. And N didn't want to change. And so he just stayed the same. It was still like a tragic hero. I did want to say about the hug. Well, first of all, hugs are amazing. I think hugs are amazing and stuff like that. With that hug, and some of the best hugs I've had, I could feel that, and just that emotional between them and all this other kind of stuff. So I think, for me at least, a hug inserted there instead of a kiss actually drew out more of that emotion, more of that feeling. It was a better placement than like a kiss. As far as them not doing anything, I still, it's my world. I still think they did something on that night. But, there was points in which just because they laid next to each other. I think that's the tragedy of it, is that, no, actually, that's the real life of it. You can't change everyone in this world, and sometimes you have to be very selective in who you're going to use your energy towards to change, and to, is this one person, is this going to be worth it? Because if you go around trying, and I'm speaking for myself, if you go around trying to change everybody, some people don't want to be changed, and some people are just going to troll you, and some people are just going to be joy thieves and just zap you. So you have to be strategic about your energy. I really did like the writing that they had on there, which is true. Like parents, you don't own your children. They have to live their own life. There's a thing about protecting your kids, but then there's the overreach of, okay, they don't have their own life, and so they have to do this, the other. So there's this balance between there, but then also when they were talking about kids, sometimes you have to bleed in order to get that wisdom. And I think that also shone through with Wang, because Wang's pain within allowed him to grow and mature and get that wisdom and stuff like that. And I think each one of those stanzas was basically each one of the characters summed up, because that last one was especially about In and not picking a side and actually picking a side and actually losing some of his morals and some of his standing. And I think that was a great postscript. Great cinematography. It was like the little parts and the little detail. Even when you point out like, oh, there's a line in the mirror, in the window separating, go between it, like that. Those little details are what made it so great. So yeah, but it does show that the effect that his time within has on him, because he still had Plato's Symposium and just all that kind of stuff and moving forward. And that's the whole thing. You leave the mess and take the message. You leave the pain behind, but you also grow from it, and you take that growth with you. And I think that's what Wang was doing, just taking that growth with him.
Yeah, the thing at the end made me realize that maybe I am missing the point of the mother, because it did seem the translation was a bit passive aggressive in like, parents, you don't own your kids. I mean, obviously Mo was controlling, etc. But ultimately, I do think that with time, she will kind of learn to set Wang free, because Wang does have his dream of traveling and all that stuff. I don't know if it's a Thai thing or a cultural thing, but it did feel very observant in terms of the parents not wanting to talk about queerness and stuff like that. And I think that is a very real relationship in terms of even leaving in, they're not really unpacking or talking about how Wang is feeling. You know, we're just gonna keep smiles and brush it over. And in that way, it's just like, I wish they did make a bit more progress in terms of that front. But in terms of political shows, ultimately the message is things take time, and we've just got to keep doing things and nudging things step by step. And I don't know, yeah, it wasn't super hopeful for In. It is just reflective of the state where things are and where feelings are, and maybe ultimately using the love as a tragedy, it is meant to invigorate or give a message to the audience, to those parties. You know, the message was very direct with the lines at the end.
The one thing I would say, the one thing that gave me hope about N was that one scene at the end where, I mean, he was still on his crutches, but it looked like he was going to finally get on the bridge and go across the bridge, because they had that whole thing about, you know, and I think it's a whole thing about building bridges and that metaphor that was happening, and him building the bridge for the villagers to come over, but actually for him to actually go across there. So that's a little hope. That's a little change that it looked like N was on the bridge, but not just testing it out, but actually to go on over to the other side. But there is a little thing about, okay, this is something he wasn't doing before and he didn't even think of before. You know, and it wasn't for Wang. Wang, I remember that whole thing earlier. Wang was like, why don't you come over to the other side and all this other kind of stuff. And they had that little disagreement about that. And I think that's how Wang changed him a little bit.
I think it's more hope for the audience that something, even if you didn't change someone, you can still leave a little bit behind. I couldn't tell if In was just not okay with being in a queer relationship. What I did actually get confused about was Wang was just like, why won't you fight for it? And I understood part of that meant standing up to the mother, but then the other part was just even admitting his feelings. And so, was he not even coming out or ready to come out or ever gonna come out? Like, I think that was where I was confused about.
Yeah, and I think the mother had a big thing to play, and that he would stand up to the mother, but then also, he would hurt the mom if Wang would stay there. But then also, you're right, he never admitted his feelings to, and the closest thing that he got to admitting his feelings for Wang was the hug, was him like really hugging him. And in fact, him, not only that, but him wanting to hug him and him granting Wang's request.
I think there were a lot of ideas, and even the psychological healing from the dad. I'm glad that Wang found it. I thought there would be a bit more scandal with the dad and psychologically how In saw Wang as the dad and all that confusion, but ultimately that didn't really go anywhere. It was the political messages that started coming to the forefront. For me, there's also that disconnect where I thought the show was going to be more about the exploration of how In's main concern was the psychological association of the dad and all that stuff, but ultimately that didn't really play a role in things. So I wonder what the intent of that was. I mean, it was dramatic, it was spooky, it was interesting. The morality seemed more about being queer than being in an age gap queer relationship or whatever. I don't know, with your best friend's son. So like, I thought we were going to get a bit more of that, but that's all. That's the last thing I have to think about.
I think, and how am I going to put this to sound all right? In Western societies and modernity, there's a bigger concern of age gaps than there are in other parts of the world, and then also in other periods of time. It may not be a thing, especially in queer relationships and the age gap culturally there, then that's why it didn't really play a part. So
I think it was more about Wang getting healing, but also one of his reasons for loving In so quickly was that he could feel more closer to the dad. I'm guessing that was the thread. I don't know if In not being able to disassociate the two at one point kind of spoke to anything bigger other than the psychological torment that he's put himself through in wanting forgiveness. Yeah, ultimately I thought there were going to be a bit more themes in terms of that type of dynamic and relationship in relation to Siam, but Siam doesn't really, the plotline there doesn't really play into the big political themes, which I thought became prominent, and the bigger message for the director to portray. I mean, I liked the ending. I think whatever it was, this result was more poignant in terms of being more reflective and realistic and kind of hopeful.
This is not one of those endings where I'm like, okay, well, this ruined the whole series for me, or I didn't like the ending. I like the ending. I think it's one of those endings where, you watch something and, it may not be the ending that you were expecting, but you're like, this fits. I'm not hoping for a series 2 of this because I think this is kind of perfect the way it is. I think it's a complete story. It's one of those series where you have to process, that you're still processing even after you finish it, even after you take a couple of weeks, you're still processing it. Even if you go back and watch it again, you're like, okay, all right. It's one of those still processing series.
Yeah, the final thing is I definitely enjoyed it. I just struggled with how we went back and forth. By what I saw was the political intention, and that against or working with the interesting father, uncle, son dynamics that I thought were riveting. In the end, I don't know if we really resolved all of the Siam tension and the storyline that was kind of one of the main draws at the beginning.
because it's Thailand, they do have to be, even with Not Me, even with all these other shows that are inherently political, they have to be careful. They either have to be careful and they also have to make sure they don't run aground as censors. I guess when some of the political stuff that is just kind of drop off, I think it's for their protection. And I mean, you saw recently, the Supreme Court just said that the PM could have another 8 years term. So,
okay, well, thank you everyone for watching our reactions and supporting this channel. If you've been here the whole time, I hope you enjoyed what we had to offer. Please think about subscribing to continue supporting us. But please let us know what you thought about the whole series, the ending, our thoughts, our discussions. Give us your take on everything and what you made sense of it. But yeah, really appreciate the engagement that we've had, and hopefully we'll have another show where we can see you again. But until then, bye. Bye.
See you later.